Excuse me? But does your friend often do that?
What's up? Nice to meet you, my brother. Welcome to the Thanos world.
I just finished Squid Game Season 2 and I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I was expecting to. The returning characters remain just as interesting and likable as they were in the first season, and the new characters actually have a lot of depth, and even the antagonists are fun to watch, even if you're just waiting for them to get killed off. That being said, my biggest issue with Season 2 is the writing flaws, a lot of which are minor, but really add up by the end of the season. So today, I'm giving my review of Avengers Squid Game. I never cared much for Season 2, not when it was teased at the beginning of Season 1, and not when the trailer was finally released. I figured Netflix would end up messing it up, as Netflix does. I was pleasantly surprised though, because I enjoyed it quite a bit, even if it doesn't reach the same level as Season 1. I, like many, thought Squid Game would be best left at one season, and that another season could ruin it, but after the iffy ending of Season 1, I never ruled out the possibility of them doing something pretty interesting if the show did continue. And while it isn't quite perfect, Avengers Squid Game is definitely worth the watch. One of the best things about Avengers Squid Game is that Gi-Hun is still the man. Even though he's changed a lot from the first season, he remains a great character that I honestly wish had more screen time. Not that he doesn't get a lot, but the introduction of so many new characters and more subplots just naturally takes up a lot of time. I love to see Gi-Hun dedicate his life and his fortune to ending the games, even if the beginning episodes before he returns to the games are pretty flawed. But it was so cool to see him back in the games, using his experience to help people before realizing that there would be all new games. It's also interesting to see how he deals with the new games, because even though they are completely different, he has faced death before, and it feels like he has a bit of experience no matter what the game is. Of course, he also leads the revolt at the end of the season, where he looks like a totally different guy from the first season, and it's awesome. He is a totally different guy, but he's also still Gi-Hun, and we see that in moments like when he said he wanted to help everybody with the next game, even those who voted to continue. I did find it a bit unexpected when he let a ton of people die, people on both sides, in order for him to start the revolt. It's not at all a bad character moment, as it was necessary, and Gi-Hun understood that. I just thought he would be a bit more conflicted about it. Anyways, Gi-Hun is still the man, even if some new characters take up some of his screen time. Speaking of new characters, there are a lot of new characters in Avengers Squid Game, and for the most part, they are pretty great. Starting with the title of this section, Thanos, or as they call him, Thanos,
I'm a legend, Thanos.
is actually one of my favorite parts of this whole season. He's a character that, at least for me, is so entertaining to watch, even if I'm just waiting for him to finally get killed off. He adds so much color and an upbeat, I guess, aura to parts of the show, and it works surprisingly well.
경수, you out! Let's go!
I've heard some people say he ruins the show for them, but I could not imagine Season 2 without Thanos.
You will come back, my friends.
But moving on to other characters, all of Gi-Hun's allies, the ones that voted to leave, add something to the show and get the perfect amount of screen time to let the audience get familiar with them and root for them without them taking up too much time. They also all have unique stories, like the mother and son who didn't even know that the other had gotten into debt, and the crypto guy and his pregnant ex-girlfriend, the Marine Daeho who has surprising depth, and Gi-Hun's friend who is just a nice guy, and that's really all he needs to be. I actually want to talk about Daeho a little bit, because while he starts off as just an energetic, respectful young man who happens to be a Marine, his big moment in the last episode really shows just how thought out all of the characters in Season 2 were. They could have left him how he was, maybe kill him off at the end for the shock value or something. They decided to give him PTSD, which leads to the revolt failing when he can't deliver the magazines. At least I'm pretty sure that's what they were trying to do. There are some weaker characters though. I want to like Gi-Hun, but his whole plotline kind of leads to nothing. I know it'll be important next season, but it kind of sucks to just see him do a whole lot of nothing. There's also no Ul, if I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, who is interesting enough, I guess, but she also does nothing all season, nothing that actually matters to the audience, that is. I think too much time is spent with her in the beginning, before the games, and not because it was a lot of time, but because it didn't do anything for the story. I understand that whatever she's doing will come into play next season, but not giving her any resolution this season doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and kinda just sucks. And before we move on to this section, of course, I have to talk about the front man, whose infiltration of the games might be the best writing decision throughout the entire season. It was super interesting to see him in the games and to wonder about his motives, even though we don't even learn his motives by the end of the season. He does still get some resolution as we see him go back to his role as the front man. I'm not sure how they're going to explain why he risked his life entering the games and why he jeopardized his own team at times, but even if they don't quite stick the landing with his character, it was still fun to see how they handled him in this season. Anyway, enough about the characters, let's get into the story. The season kicks off with Gi-Hun using his winnings to fund a search party for the recruiter of the Squid Games, who, after getting tracked down by Gi-Hun, blows his brains out in embarrassment. I want to talk about this scene a bit because even though it's done perfectly from a technical and acting point of view, I found it a little unbelievable. Like, they were both seriously willing to shoot themselves just to convince the other person that they're not what they say they are. Like, the recruiter would rather shoot himself than admit to Gi-Hun that he's a dog for the games, and Gi-Hun would rather shoot himself than admit to the recruiter that he's trash. And I understand that neither of them want to admit this, but their lives are at stake. If I'm either one of these guys, I don't care what I have to admit to the other guy because I would rather live. If Gi-Hun did shoot the recruiter, or vice versa, why would they even care so much about what the other person thought? It's just a game of, if you kill me, that means you're this. But killing the other person doesn't really have anything to do with what they're saying. I understand that if the recruiter cheated and killed Gi-Hun, that would be something that the people behind the games might want, and therefore the recruiter is their dog, but it's not about proving Gi-Hun wrong. It's about not shooting yourself. Also, why did Gi-Hun even play the game in the first place? Maybe I missed something, but did he not just willingly walk into a life or death scenario for no reason? No attempt to stop the recruiter from luring him into this game? Hopefully what I'm saying makes sense. Maybe it doesn't, but point is that this moment in the show, to me, is a poor writing decision that's only purpose is to provide the audience with this big, suspenseful moment, which is not good writing. Next, I want to touch on how predictable the plot is before the games. The audience already knows from trailers and stuff that Gi-Hun will return to the games, and that means that any effort he makes to stop it now before he's back in the games will fail. It's pretty predictable that they won't succeed at the club and that the mercenaries Gi-Hun hired are going to get stopped by the people behind the games who are just always one step ahead. Like, I don't know about you, but I kind of knew that the tracking device in Gi-Hun's tooth was not going to work. Not because I'm like psychic, but because, you know, of course it wouldn't work. That would mean that something Gi-Hun did was actually successful. This problem does not happen throughout the whole season, thankfully, but in the first few episodes, it kind of took me out of it a bit. By no means does it ruin the show, because the plot is still realistic and mostly believable, but at the same time, also a bit forced and dependent on the incompetence of the protagonists. As the show goes on, though, and the games do return, I think the writing does get better, and while it isn't Breaking Bad level or anything, it still provides a very entertaining story. The new games in particular are done very well, not just because the games themselves are very entertaining concepts, but because of the sequences, like the editing and the music and all the technical stuff is done so perfectly. There's a good balance between the games, new character development, and the overarching plot point of trying to end the games, and even if there's really no resolution to any of the big plot points, which kind of sucks, it's still satisfying to see each character do their own thing. Avengers Squid Game is an entertaining, well above average show by today's standards, and you should definitely give it a watch if you enjoyed the first season. I'm not a fan of all the half seasons that we keep getting today, like Invincible Season 2, The Bear Season 3, Across the Spider-Verse, which isn't a show but you get the point, and now Squid Game Season 2. It doesn't make them bad, but sometimes a little unsatisfying. Anyway, Squid Game Season 2 is great, and I will definitely be watching the next season as soon as it comes out next year. Or, wait, it's this year. Wow. Happy New Year, everybody, and thank you so much for watching this video. I know it's much different from what I usually do, but I really did want to give this kind of content a shot, and if you do want to see more, please consider dropping a like and a sub. Feel free to suggest anything in the comments. I'm open to pretty much whatever. Anyway, thank you again for watching, and until next time.